Probably the context in which you deal with percents the most often in your everyday life is in terms of things with purchases, either looking at the tip you have to pay at a bar or restaurant, or the discount you might get on a purchase, or more often, the tax that you pay with a purchase. And in fact, some might argue that the origin of percents is in sales tax, as the first recorded use of a percent was done by the Emperor Augustus of Rome, in which he charged a tax of 1 part per 100 for the price of goods at auction. Where, for our purposes, in order to be able to find the value that you'd expect to pay or get off, as it were, with a percentage, you can compute that pretty easily. The value there, A, is equal to the percent that you're looking at times the total price of what that percentage is in terms of. Where sometimes that sort of value is pretty easy to compute. Sometimes you have a nice shortcut you can use, especially with things like tipping, where you often have convenient values. So if you have a $87 bill, for example, you have a nice night out, might be a little bit heavy for most people's budgets who are watching this video, but hey, it happens occasionally, and you want to pay a 20% tip. Well, what you can do there is recognize that to get your value, you can either take that $87 total bill and divide by 5, because 20% is the same as 0.20, is the same as 1/5, or because sometimes people aren't super comfortable dividing by 5, and this isn't a great value for it, you could instead take that bill, multiply its value by 2, and divide that by 10, because 1/5 is the same as 20%, but that's also the same as 2/10. Sometimes multiplying by 2 and dividing by 10 is a little bit easier. It is in many cases for most people. And as a result, you'd get that your tip there is $17.40. So your total bill would be $104.40. Pretty easy to do in that case, but sales taxes, they tend not to be quite so convenient. Those are often values between 5 and 10%, which go towards state and local government to help fund things like local police forces and local parks, any sort of municipal need that isn't covered by federal funds is handled by the state, and a lot of state money comes from sales tax, which we'll talk about in a bit, but first I want to get a quick example here with how we can make that kind of computation. Suppose you live in Dothan, Alabama, where sales tax is 9% and you're looking to purchase a $785 laptop so that you can research ways to leave Dothan, Alabama. You realize that Jackson County, Florida is less than an hour away and has stores selling the laptop for the same price, but with only 7.5% sales tax. How much would you save buying the laptop in Florida and thereby consider leaving for Florida entirely? Well, in this case, what we can do is use that formula we have twice in a row. Basically, we need to find the value here, A, in terms of the tax in Alabama, so I use A sub AL for that, with a postal abbreviation for Alabama, as well as the one in Florida, where in both cases it's the same computation, except one has a slightly smaller number. For Alabama, we are taking that 9%, 0.09, and multiplying it by $785. So the tax bill there will end up being $70.65. Meanwhile, in Florida, while it is a little bit cheaper, if you've been to both those places, it's not actually that much better, it's just Florida, not Alabama, but that would only end up being 0.075 for 7.5%, multiplied by $785, which would give you a total in that case of, let me actually round here because we usually do follow standard rounding scheme for things like taxes, $58.88. Where in this case, if you went to Florida instead of Alabama, you would end up saving $11.77, thereabouts, which is probably not as much as you'd spend on gas for the drive over, depending on exactly where you went and what route you took. Either way, it's not that good of a deal. And if you're looking at this and thinking to yourself, man, sales tax is weird and confusing and kind of a pain in the ass, you'd be right. And you'd especially be right in the case of, say, travelers from Europe who are used to what is instead a value-added or VAT tax, where their prices include sales tax. In the United States, because we have a tax that is levied, at the point of sale rather than at any time in the process beforehand, and different states, different counties, different cities even can have different tax values. We can't incorporate all of these into all of our prices. So depending on where you go, you may end up running into a situation where, despite what it says on the can...
But the price on the can, though.
The price is on the can, though.
That's not the price you end up paying. However, there are a few states that don't have sales taxes in particular. Those are Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon. Most sales tax systems were started, or at the very least, they've developed since the Great Depression, and states were in pretty desperate need to have more funding. And at this point, sales taxes tend to account for about a third of state and local government funding, which is usually a plurality of their funding overall. So while it is kind of annoying to deal with, these taxes are actually pretty important for making sure the state is able to function in the way that it needs to. But anyway, with these, finding sales tax prices is always a matter of this kind of computation and some addition. So let's also get one example here looking for discounts, which is the same basic process, except at the end we're not adding, we're taking away because we're getting a better deal.